I think there's too much debt in the system, government debt, company debt, personal debt. When you look at all the stats and where we're going, it's costing more to service that debt. I think we're in a bit of an asset bubble at the moment. So I think, a lot of people are nervous and a bit scared. So we're seeing a lot of buy-to-let landlords exiting.
I believe we're heading into one of the most volatile times in property history, and it's time for you to exchange your time and your education for wealth. Ever since I started this podcast, I have been on a mission to find out what traits make someone successful. What experience do they have? What environment did they grow up in? It's really important to find and locate these certain traits because you need to transmute that into what you do every day. It's been a great learning so far, and there's lots more coming, so stay tuned for great interviews throughout this podcast. Hi there all, Sebring here. I'm with Bobby. He's kindly invited me over. Well, I've asked him, but come over to do a lovely interview with him today. He's full of experience, full of knowledge, and really big in property investing. And yeah, just thought it'd be great for you to share some knowledge and wisdom with our viewers. So if you could tell me a little bit about yourself, what do you like doing outside of property?
My main, I spend a lot of time with my children. I've got 2 boys. My eldest is going to be 17 and my youngest is 13. So I enjoy taking them out for food, doing stuff with them, watching their sports, watching them grow up, trying to teach them my mistakes and for them to be the best people they can. That's what gives me most of my satisfaction. I love sport, so I've done a lot of competitive sports over my life, kickboxing, karate, rugby, all to a good level, international level at kickboxing. And now for the last 7-8 years, I've been doing CrossFit, which I really enjoy.
Nice.
It struggles as you get a bit older, but I do that at least 5-6 days a week. That's my mental release. Go for an hour, give it my best, just to sort of like clock off. I do quite a bit of meditation with a group, sort of goal setting, visualization. Nice. I've been working on this a lot more. Because there's things we don't understand, and I'm trying to connect to that sort of spiritual part as well. My family is very important to me, not just my immediate family. So my mum and dad live down the road. I regularly go in and see my mum, who I love to bits. And then being Indian, we've got massive family all over the country.
Yeah, nice.
So, my dad's brothers and sisters, and then their children, the same on my wife's side. I'm very close to them. So we regularly meet up, we go on holidays, and we have lots of parties and weddings. So that's what I enjoy.
Oh, it sounds really good. That whole aspect already, is a real driver for yourself, as you say. Would you say the physical and the mental side of it is to help with all the physical and mental sides of business, trying to make yourself more, less fearful, more ambitious, having a goal and a desire is really important within business. Would you say that's relevant?
I think being healthy, and I've always done it from a very young age, and I've always trained very hard, and I really enjoy it. I just notice my strength and fitness is dropping a little bit, but I'm still in good shape. But I think maybe just this competitive nature I've always had, I think it helps in business. Sometimes it's not great because I don't like to lose, and I do beat myself up. But it definitely helps, and that's one thing I push the boys in. My youngest, I don't have to push so much. I have to calm him down because he does boxing, rugby, football, tennis. He's doing something every day. Whereas the eldest, I have to push him a bit more. I think it's really important. You know, and both my brother and sister were very sporty as well. I just think it's just really important. It's interesting you mentioned that. When I went, in my first career after university, I was in banking. I used to trade equity derivatives for US banks. I'm not going to go too much into derivatives because it's quite complicated.
Yeah.
But we worked with a lot of professional athletes. This is before it got computerized in something called the Life Exchange, which is a pit. The guys with coloured jackets shouting at each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were all a lot of ex-professional American football players, basketball players, all competitive athletes, but all quite good at maths. So I remember my interview was completely random. Traders in a room pushing you, shouting at you, and in the end, one of the directors is a rower, Olympic rower, Jack, his name was, American guy from Harvard. And I got the interview because he challenged me, and I said to him, well, the interview, let's just, you know, I'm not going to have somebody talk to me like this way. And he said, well, do you want to step outside the office? And no, and he sat with the other director and he goes, congratulations, you got the job. I thought I blew it.
Yeah.
But that competitive side was very important in the trading on the floor. It changed when it got computerized.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important, but it has its disadvantages as well, because, you know, you need to, a lot of the time, I think, be calm as well. And I do take things to heart sometimes. I'm getting better at it. But I think this competitive side is important as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that profoundly. I think you need that drive and that competitiveness to be good and the best at what you do.
Yeah.
But also it can have its downfalls in that, you know, maybe going too far or trying to push too much. Do you know what I mean? So you say you were selling derivatives, was it? Sorry.
Yeah, so no, I used to trade when I left university. So I always, even at school, I was the first one in my whole family to get educated. So my grandfather came from India in the 50s, worked in a steel mill up in Yorkshire, Leeds. And then, like a lot of immigrants that came over, he brought my dad. My dad was the last one to arrive, but my dad's got 3 sisters and a brother. He brought them over as he could afford them. A lot of people from Asia or around the world, there used to be 20, 30 of them living in a house, single guys, and then they just raised enough money because Britain at that time was booming, industrialization. And he brought them over to the UK. So my grandparents were the first to arrive in the 50s, and then my dad came over in the 60s. So I was the first one to get educated. And I just always had this competitive nature. I love doing sports. My parents didn't really used to push me, but I enjoyed it. I was quite academic as well at school. I wasn't the brightest. But I did had a great education at a great school in Cardiff, and did my GCSEs. The first one to do GCSEs after O levels. Did my A levels. Did a degree in business and finance in Bath University.
Okay.
And then after that, I went to work with my father, which I'll come on to after, in the textile business for a few months. I wasn't happy. Yeah. And I remember my father telling me, I said, I'm going to go to London and I'm going to go into banking. And he said, well, I bet you'll be back in 6 months. And I didn't. So I went into banking, traded traded for a US small bank. And then we got built out by a massive bank called Bear Stearns. Okay. And I traded equity derivatives. So I started off as a junior, worked my way up to a senior, associate director. And I used to manage certain indices, from one being the FTSE, the CAC, which is the French index, the SMI, which is a Swiss index. And derivatives people don't realize how big derivatives are. They're basically multiples of GDP. So you're talking I don't even know what the stats were, but I remember whatever the GDP is worldwide, multiply that by 10 and you don't even get close to derivatives. So derivatives are about probabilities are, of where the market's going. It gives you the option to buy or sell you can be stocks or indices at a certain price and a certain time point. So I traded derivatives for the bank for just over a decade. Yeah,
that's a great story. Yeah. That already is. Would you say, and just going back a little bit, would you say the degree in business has effectively helped you in the property world now? I just want to jump on that a little bit. Would you say those skills have been transferable into what you do every day now in your business? Just out of curiosity in sort of the education system there, and what your thoughts are with that.
I have mixed feelings on this. So traditionally, my opinion on education is changing quite a lot. So I did learn, luckily, a lot of applicable stuff. So we learned about Japanese style management, we learned about production, we learned about finance, and a lot of stuff is not applicable to today. But then, like my sister, she's done very well. She did a geography degree, and she's in corporate finance, and she's like the CFO for AIA in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays you get a lot of people who are very highly educated, but not so successful. So like my dad is very successful. He started a degree. And I know some of the most successful people don't have an education, but they got that drive.
Yeah.
So I think, education is important, but it's not the be all and end all. Some people, you can study theory as much as you want, but the people that I look up to, a lot of them are self-made. They're not so educated, but they've got a real hunger and passion, and they're not scared.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think there are skills there, but there are skills that are just naturally, sort of seeded into you through your environment growing up. But yeah.
There's the same with my son now. We're at a dilemma with him. So we've given our kids the best education. They're in the best schools in Cardiff, Cathedral and Howells, both they've been there since a very young age. And my eldest now, we're in a dilemma. I don't know if he's academically inclined. We're pushing him, but I'm saying to my wife, and we're talking about it, rather than him doing a degree and wasting 3 years, maybe we get him into something that's more applicable. He's not sure what he wants to do. He said he wants to go into property, come with me, and I'm like, you have to go out and find yourself first.
Yeah.
So maybe he gets an apprenticeship in chartered surveying or something like that, training in a profession, which I think is sometimes better if you know what you want to do. Because I do see a lot of people today who've done a degree, but then they can't find a job or they struggle. So I don't think education is the be all and end all. But if you know what you want to do, like if you want to become a doctor or an architect, then you have to go down that route.
Yeah.
But I think for business, I think some of it's relevant, but I'm always learning and I don't know enough at all. I'm trying to educate myself all the time. And I don't even know this, I think that comes through experience.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think I can resonate with that. Went to uni myself, didn't have a direction, just wasn't interested. Yeah. Really a waste of time. Then sort of went around for a bit not knowing what to do. And sort of, I agree. I think there's certain trades and stuff that you should go down and you can use those skills and just sort of find out what you want to do. Yeah. And I think that would be the way forward for someone who's not sure like I was. So we touched on a little bit of your background, how you sort of, where your desires are, what your focus is now. And we touched on the banking. Is there another sort of workforce you went into after the banking?
Yeah, so I did the banking straight after university, worked for a couple of banks. This is quite important to, my work ethic. So my dad, when he basically he got married to my mum. In those times, an arranged marriage. Married my mum was the best thing he did.
Yeah.
Because my mum's awesome.
Yeah.
He basically, because he got married, he was doing an engineering degree. He had to quit that, and he had to make some money. So my mother's uncle, based in Leeds, lovely guy, taught my dad the business. A lot of Indians in that time were in textiles, clothing, very big, and still to date now. And he had a wholesale business in Leeds, taught my dad for a year. My dad went travelling around the UK because he said, listen, I've taught you, you could go on your own now. So my dad drove around the UK, went to Scotland, London, South England, everywhere. He said he ended up in Cardiff. He said people were so friendly. He goes, there was no Asians. This is 50 years ago. There was no Asians. So he thought, great, no competition.
Yeah.
But he started off at the bottom. What I mean at the bottom, my dad we come from, I'm very lucky. We're farmers by tradition. All my ancestors were farmers we're Sikh, from the north of India. We've got a very strong culture and heritage, which we take the kids back to. We've still got a farmhouse there with my grandparents, which is down my dad's, and passes on. And the culture aspect is quite important to, so my dad, you know what, I've lost change of thought now, so we might have to edit that.
No, that's all right. You carry on.
Where were we talking about?
So sort of transitioning from the bank into the...
Yeah. So my dad basically started off on Splot and Bessemer Market at a market stall, built up from that. He got a small wholesaler in the basement in Charles Street in Cardiff.
Okay.
And he basically used to go up to Leicester, Manchester, and basically buy from manufacturers, ladies' clothing. And from there, he built up a really big, good wholesale business.
Okay.
Where he'd buy from, mostly around importers from around London, East End, Leicester, Manchester, places like that. He'd bring it back to Cardiff, and then he'd supply all the shops around South Wales and South West.
I like it.
And the business really grew. I was brought up in that business as a kid. So my dad's next place after, he moved to just off City Road in Cardiff. He had a business there, a wholesaler. And when I was a kid after school, I'd have to go to the cash and carry, price up the garments, serve people on the till, take stuff out of cartons. And I remember going on the weekend, unloading the trucks, putting the stock out. And I did all that from a very young age. And then the business grew. But I always worked in the business. My dad was like, you have to work in it. So I didn't know anything different. Counting lots of money when I was a kid. Everything was cash then, most of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I grew up in that business, and eventually my dad went into manufacturing himself. So we went to the Far East. He went to Hong Kong originally. That was the gateway to China, probably about 30 years ago, and he started manufacturing there. And then from there, he went to other places, India, Vietnam, Bangladesh. So I was brought up in that business from a very young age. I know about that business probably more than anything because I'd been brought up in it. So when I left banking, I probably transcended a bit, but when I left banking, I always had this pressure from my dad and my brother because their business grew a lot and they were supplying all the big, whoever you can think of on the high street, Marx's, Next, people like that, Bon Marché, Peacocks, River Island, they were started supplying them. And they were doing very well. And they wanted, so my brother he's a few years younger than me, went straight into the business after uni. And my dad wanted us to come in the business. So I had one bad year on my bonus. I got spoiled. So when you're trading, you're making millions for the company, and you're making, when I was in my 20s, we were getting, 500,000 quid bonuses, crazy money. And I had one bad year where my bonus was 50 grand. Yeah? And I thought it was shit.
Yeah.
And I thought the grass was green on the other side. A lot of pressure from my dad and brother to rejoin the business.
Oh, man.
I rejoined the business and it wasn't what I thought. So my dad, it's just the way he is. Maybe he wants to be in control of everything, wouldn't let me do quite a lot of stuff, a lot of arguments with my brother as well. And we just couldn't work together. So I did that for 2-3 years. I suffered actually a lot of depression through that time.
Okay.
Believe it or not, suicidal thoughts. We just had a young family as well. We started. And luckily, you know, I got a break in the fact that one of our competitors and also our customers called Tabery, they were based in Lincoln. They were going through money problems, administration. And I looked at the company and I thought it was a way out. So we took the company over and I ran that company. And that was a massive learning curve. So gone from that to taking over a company that's losing a few hundred grand a year. They had a lot of staff based in Lincoln and warehouses, had to relocate all the stock here, had to set up my own team because my brother didn't want me to take staff from the original company. So I had to get all my own designers, my sales staff, had to basically start sourcing my own factories from abroad. It was a different type of business. It was an outdoor clothing business.
Okay.
And I went into that business and that was tough. So the first year or two, I was probably doing close to 100 hours a week sometime, spending 3 months of the year abroad in the factories. But I learned a lot. And then the business, I built it up again and it started doing really well. So, you know, we basically, what we do in that business, it was called Tabery. We designed everything in-house in the UK. And then I would make it with different factories, mainly in China. We had an office in China. I would make some stuff in India and Bangladesh. And then we'd work a year in advance and we'd sell to the high street or small outlets. We had 6 different salesmen across different parts. So I had one in Scotland, one in Cambridge. We still had an office in Lincoln, had one in West Wales. And what else did we have? We had another one, I can't remember. But we had about 6 sales reps. And I did that business for about 10 years. But the clothing and manufacturing and retail is very tough. So what we found, this happened about 7 years ago, 2016. What I found was the larger customers, they were cancelling orders. So we built up a lot of stock, over £1 million worth of stock. And they weren't paying on time. And the bankruptcy laws are quite weak in the UK. So the larger companies that maybe have 100 shops, they might order 10,000 garments for you over different drops through the season. They were putting companies through and restarting it and then buying the stock back for pennies on the pound. So I said to my wife, we built up a team we almost had 40 staff. We're doing about 8 mil turnover. And I wasn't making any money. I wasn't enjoying it. I just said to her, listen, I want to get out of this. So it took me a year to close it. And that was tough because I thought I could take the company to the next level. And it was tough closing it. And again, like after the banking, I probably had 6 months. I was feeling really depressed, suicidal. I thought it was the end of the world. I just took time out. And then I had a lot of friends and family doing property. And they're doing extraordinarily well. And they're working a fraction of the time that I was working. So I decided to go into property. And the first one I did was a real hard one. I didn't know anything about property. I had a good mathematical mind from my banking background. And I've always been in business as well. So I bought a college in Newport, a grade 2 listed building, probably the worst project to start with. And it was a headache. It was but I learned a lot from that. And we bought that college. I just went to auction, saw a building, really liked the building. It was reasonably cheap. Put my hand up in the auction. They said sold, and I was like, shit.
I got this now.
What am I going to do? And I'm like, can I get out, sort of thing, because I didn't know what I got myself into.
Yeah.
Went through the planning process, took a lot longer because Newport is a real difficult place. We had to deal with a conservation officer who was constantly off sick, very restrictive in what we could do with the building, but we eventually got it. And then when we went to do the construction drawings, I realised we did about 20 flats there, that if we built them out, I wasn't going to make much money on it. But luckily, we found another route through a contact, and we did a social housing scheme.
Okay.
And we worked with an approved contractor, and we did, I think it was about 18 units, and we did it with Newport City Homes, a housing association, and that worked out really well.
So what was the original, just to let them out as sort of units?
So we were just going to do a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, and then we're going to sell them. We did do the same scheme, but with the housing associations, the sizes were bigger, the spec was actually bigger, and we cut the amount of units down. And we basically just did a package with the housing association and the approved contractor. And we delivered the scheme for them, and then they bought, the Newport City Homes bought them.
So you ended up selling them in the end?
Yeah.
That was the idea throughout? It was never going to be held?
No, it wasn't the idea. The idea was we'd do them for the private rental market, and then we'd sell them as 2 beds and 1 beds. But based on the market there, we realised once we built them all out and the time and everything, we weren't going to make much money on it, like 5-10%. But luckily, we found an exit with a housing association, and we made really good money on that.
Wow, that's good. I like how, that's again adapting to a scenario which is probably not intended, well, it isn't intended to be that. But yeah, no, I like that. So that was your first project. It's quite a heavy project to take on. What was when you put your hand up and it sold, was it like a rush of like, oh no, what have I done?
Yeah, I was like, I'm not scared. Like even now we've got something quite big going on and it's a risk. I'm not scared because you've got to take a gamble sometimes. I didn't know what the exit plan was. And luckily we found an option. So I think even with a lot of property, you don't know what the exit plan is, but you keep on looking for the exit or what the solution is, and something comes up. You know, that you find. You can have, an end vision of what you want to do, but it doesn't go like that all the time. So you have to adapt.
Yeah. I agree. So we've gone from sort of banking and trading into sort of a textiles business, running that, and sort of do you reckon that didn't work because it's such a competitive sort of market in terms of distribution, or because fashion's changing all the time, or is it, do you reckon?
It's just, the clothing, and it's like a lot of business, retail's changing. So if you go to the high street now, a lot of the smaller shops don't exist because of online. And when you're in this business, you have to work a year and ahead, and you have to plan. You have to buy the fabric. You have to buy the accessories. You've got to book the production slots. You've got to put a lot of money up front, and then you've got to give credit to the stores. And the stores are getting more and more difficult to work with. So if they want to cancel the order, they'll say the Pantone, which is the colour reference, is out of shade. They'll try and cancel the order, and then they'll try and discount it. And when you're doing big quantities with some of these stores, you're working on small margins. I think it's not just applicable to the clothing. It's a lot of industries where you're making something and supplying to the high street or retail. That retail environment is very tough. So if you go to the high street, you're getting less and less and less things, and you're getting larger online stores. It's just a very competitive business. And, at the end of the day, you could be working, putting all that effort in, providing it to a customer, expecting to get paid, and to them to honour their commitment, even though you got a contract and they don't honour the contract and they don't pay you on time. So we just saw the pattern, and I just thought, why am I doing all this hard work?
Something in that.
And then the problem was we had so many staff. We had over 1 mil in overheads. And I was just working to pay the overheads. And I was like, why am I doing this? I'm not seeing my kids grow up. I'm spending all this time abroad. But I think retail, or, you know, when you're manufacturing and distributing like we were, designing, manufacturing and retailing is a really tough business. Is a very tough business. I do miss it because I still see people wear my clothing. And I go up to them, I go, oh, how do you like that jacket? And they go, you know what happened to it? You know, 'cause we love the stuff. So I enjoyed, you know, I'm not a designer. So we had a team of designers, garment techs, merchandisers. They would come up with designs. I would see, well, this is working in the market, this isn't working, and then we'd bring them back on the straight and narrow. But yeah, I do miss the industry, and there was some great people that I'm still in contact with. So we use some local manufacturers. Like I get some people still sending me gifts every Christmas. I've got good contacts still in different countries, good friends as well. We did a lot of business with each other, but that's just a chapter of my life. I did learn a lot from it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and you explained it well there. So, should we talk about what you're doing now in terms of what your property journey's led to, what you're sort of working on?
So at the moment, so we've done a mixture of stuff. So we've done the college, we bought a school in England where that one we didn't get what we want, but we managed to double what we paid for it. We've done some new builds as well. And at the moment, we've got 3 different projects on. So one of them is a real difficult. So we bought a small, like, mixed-use property in Cardiff. Was an architect's office. We made a few flats and a commercial shop. A year and a half ago, cannabis farm next door. Burnt all our uppers.
Really?
The insurance, we've still got a legal case. So. Against the neighbour. So my insurance only paid me a third of the claim. So the claim was a couple $100,000. They only paid me 60 grand because we changed the use of the shop downstairs during COVID. It was like an estate agent, and they walked out. And we had to get, the only people interested were takeaways. So it took us a year for the tenant in there to get the change of use. But in the insurance terms, we had to, even though it was a shell, we had to notify them about the change in use. So we still got a legal case going on where we're fighting the neighbour because he wasn't inspecting the property and he wasn't doing the tenancy check. So this is still ongoing. But rather, we fought it for a year, but what we've done in the meantime is we've gone in for planning, we've extended it 6 meters, and we're getting another couple of flats in there.
Okay.
So that one is actually started.
Nice.
They've gutted the place. They've stripped it. We've gone a 6 meter extension on the ground floor and the first floor and a dormer in it. So the works have started on that, and that should be ready November, December. We've got something going through now, which we'll be posting about. So we've, so don't post this until we're exchanging on it next week. So we bought an office block in Cardiff about a month ago. About a month ago we've agreed it. We're going to do an apart hotel scheme of about 20 units.
Nice.
As a first phase, and the second phase we're going to build some sort of maisonette townhouses in the car park. So this one, we'll have a busy week just working on the layouts with the architect. He'll get it to the planner. And then, that one will probably take us a year to do. So we reckon we'll get the planning later this year on it. We're taking a risk. So we've gone in and bought it cash. I think so my team around me, my professionals, I've got a really good, so my planning consultant, Powis, is my ex-rugby coach. From when I was at uni, I used to play for Cardiff Harlequins. He's probably the best planner in Wales. He's quite selective. He's semi-retired, and I learned so much from him. He's confident, and I trust him. that will get the planning in a few
Okay.
months, because he's
Nice.
done the building next door where he
Yeah.
got 27 flats.
Okay, so
he's like,
he knows sort of what's needed there.
he knows.
Yeah.
So that one will go through. We've got the one which we're doing, the fire one. Where we are now, we've got a planning application in our house. We've got a new build. We've got 5 garages at the back.
Yeah.
Putting a new build, and we're working. We're desperately trying to find more commercial properties or land where we can do residential units. We've been bidding on a lot of stuff. We agreed to buy a hotel about 2 months ago, agreed the price with the liquidator, with the agent, had heads of terms, and then the banks turned around and asked for more money, and we walked away from it in the end, and we spent a lot of time and money. But
Oh man.
in property, we're always bidding on stuff. I bid on recently some care homes, some office blocks. We didn't get them. We're stuck with the numbers, but we're looking for more stuff. But I'm quite analytical on the numbers. So Powers helps me with the planning. I've got architects I work with that help me with the layouts. I work with commercial surveyors as well. They'll help me with the valuations. QSs as well. So there's a whole team of different people that will help me put the jigsaw together before we
good.
bid.
Yeah.
And then we've got a selection of different contractors, as well we're speaking to. But we're just trying to get more and leverage up. We're talking to sort of private equity funds to leverage up what we've got as well. We're talking to private investors as well who want to invest with us, people that know me as well, have known me, most of my life, that want to invest rather than going to banks.
Yeah.
So we're just looking to do more.
Yeah, I like that. So there's a few things in the pipeline now, always keeping things in the pipeline. Right. Always reinvesting what you get into try and grow and, build.
So I'm at this stage now where we just want to basically just grow as much as we can, and just generate enough cash flow to, and set up the right team. So eventually, I don't have to be doing everything, because that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And the option my children go into as well. But we're trying to do now is sort of like higher end sort of flats, mid to high end, as opposed to budget.
Okay.
There's a massive need, but it all comes down to the pricing and the margins for me. Okay. That's the most important.
And in terms of the exit, is it to sell or is it to hold?
So a lot of stuff we sold, we're going to keep it. Most stuff we're going to keep now. Some schemes that we're looking at, every scheme is different depending on the location. So some schemes are to sell. The ones we're doing at the moment, we're all going to hold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think, do you think that's shifted a little bit now to wanting to hold for the long term? Or do you like the quick sort of the profit made and reinvest there?
That's what we were doing before, flipping. But we want to basically hold stuff for the cash flow and then for the appreciation as well. I do feel very confident that, we're at the start of a proper recession. I think interest rates have got more to go up.
Yeah.
I think there's too much debt in the system, government debt, company debt, personal debt. When you look at all the stats and where we're going, it's costing more to service that debt. I think we're in a bit of an asset bubble at the moment. So I think, a lot of people are nervous and a bit scared. So we're seeing a lot of buy-to-let landlords exiting because...
Yeah, definitely.
But that's not really my bag.
No.
So obviously now it's when they're coming off their fixed term and they're coming to remortgage, their rental, is sometimes less than what they have to pay.
100%.
So I do think that's going to filter through. So we are seeing that, the way people work and live, especially commercial, offices. People aren't going to the office all the time. So there's a lot of sort of like incentives from the government to look at commercial property and capital allowances and stuff. So we're going to focus more on commercial new builds. We're not seeing we're seeing it in different parts of the country, but in Cardiff there's limited stock. But I do think it's coming.
Yeah.
All we can do is keep looking.
Yeah.
We speak to a lot of commercial agents a lot of the time, a lot of commercial surveyors. Just keep on looking, putting the bids out there, and not get. It's difficult because when you're putting a bid in, it can take you weeks to find the answer, and you spend a bit of money with your team and you don't get it.
Yeah.
And there's still people paying crazy money for stuff, but I do feel we're in a correction. When you look at different parts of the world, prices have come down significantly. We've got family in the States that do property. Stuff's come down there. My sister lives in Hong Kong. That's come down a lot.
Okay.
Parts of Europe have. So I don't know when it's going to happen or how deep it's going to be. But we're looking for those opportunities.
I agree with you there. I think that the landlords are selling up because the interest rates in the single let isn't stacking as well. And where are all those people going to be housed? And, I agree within that there could be a sort of a boom in that market for the large units to house those people. It sounds like you're doing great stuff. Go on.
No, what I was going to say is, I don't know from my gut, from what I know. So I do, the way my brain's inclined, I study the markets, I study market cycles. When I look at the stock markets now, I think they're so overvalued based on, where the forecasted, price per earnings ratios are. I do think we have a massive correction. It's been 15 years since the last one, and I think it's just down to asset prices are too high, and the debt is too high. So obviously, the last 15 years, everybody that's bought property's done all right because it's just gone like that, and especially since COVID.
Yeah.
But people are too over leveraged.
Yeah.
So they've bought property with literally none of their own money, and the property's gone up, and then they've refinanced and used that for other things. But it's now coming unsustainable. People, especially with mortgage rates where they are, and they're probably more where they should be. So I think the governments worldwide, they're playing games. They printed all this money, they kept interest rates too low for too long. And when you look at the historical norm, they should be a lot higher. They should be, where we are today, they should be around that rate.
Do you reckon this last decade was probably the easiest time to invest in property in terms of the money was so cheap that it was just constantly going up, the market was just constantly rising? I know obviously at the time you didn't know that.
It's a combination of both. So people don't understand I don't think it was property going up. It's the value of money going down. So because they're printing. So it wasn't just property. If you look at everything like maybe luxury watches, luxury cars, property, everything was going up because they were just printing more money.
Yeah.
And it's just typing on the computer, just adding some zeros.
Yeah.
But I believe that debt has to be paid back.
Yeah.
We've never been in a situation. So the debt they've created, especially, it's just accelerating. When you look at that curve, it's just going like this now, and it's unsustainable.
Because they can't just print, because their printing's just doing no effect now, is it?
No, that debt has to be paid. You can't keep on. So I don't even know. We're at a situation. I read a lot of theories as well. Maybe there's a reset of currencies. There's an ulterior motive, I believe, by governments as well. They've got a long-term plan where we're just the ants in their game.
Yeah.
And there could be a way where they reset the system and they start again, because the debt is unsustainable. And now, obviously, when you look at like the UK, the debt is over $1 trillion. It's more than the GDP. And now because, like the swap rates, which is basically what people abroad are willing, to what they do is with the swap rates is the interest rates that people are willing to lend to us.
Yeah.
And that's going up. It's like the highest it's been. I think it's like 5.5%, 5.7% at the moment. So the government have to pay interest on the debt they have, and that debt now is you're talking hundreds of billions.
And
they've got to service that debt. So now what they're trying to do is, because they've created this bubble, they're doing something to the opposite of quantitative easing, quantitative tightening.
Yeah.
So they're basically, by increasing interest rates, they're trying to slow down the economy, and they're actually trying to cause a recession. They know it's coming, but I think they're going to deflate the economy, and I think that's what governments worldwide are doing. And I think we have a bit of pain for the next year or two, but it's the same when you look at stock markets. You've got natural cycles. And I think we're in a corrective cycle now, and I don't know how big it's going to be, how long it'll last, because the government realises property is so important, and especially in the UK, most people's money is parked in property. That's their biggest asset.
So if we're talking, obviously it's just numbers now, but the correction, what are we looking at, do you think, in terms of like a percentage? If you were to say a number.
I don't know. You know what? I don't know. I hear some people talking 50%. When you look at most of the, big professional property agents like Savills or maybe Rightmove, or the government, they're predicting 10%. I think you will see maybe something in between. But it all depends on what the government's going to do, because they can't have it let it fall. Because last correction they said, I don't know, what did they say, if it was 15 or 20% it dropped, but you could find stuff 50% below, 60% when people get desperate. And I do think we're in a different situation to lots of parts of the world, because we're a small country. The population's increasing rapidly with net migration. I think it's about 400,000 a year. There's a massive shortage of housing as well. And it's coming unaffordable. I do understand for younger people, they can't even raise the deposits now. But you've also got a situation now where a lot of deals we're looking at, because rates are so high and build costs are so high, you can't make the deal work.
No, I agree. 100%, that's what we're finding.
Yeah. So I think you'll see a lot of amateurs or people over leverage having to get out. And it's like, I would say similar to trading. When you get a move, it moves quick. So when people want to get out and people are over leveraged, the market moves quick and fast. It could be one of those where it's short and thin, but it could be long and protracted, because things maybe rates have to stay there at 5. I think they go to 5.5, 6. Maybe they have to stay there for a while, because they cannot have inflation as it is at the moment, because it's just it destroys economies. If you just look over the 70s, the Great Depression in the 30s, inflation is one of the worst things. It will just, you look what it's done to Zimbabwe, Argentina, places like that. So I do think it is interesting times. And it's going to be, a lot of people are going to make a lot of money. But I don't know.
Do you think that it's going to be the people that have the cash funds and the finance? So again, does it go back to the rich get richer?
No, I think I've seen a lot of people doing conditional offers, where they basically they'll get a building, they'll line up the planning, and then they'll get the finance once they got the planning. So subject to planning. So there'll be stuff like that. We're looking to work with funds where we're giving them a share of profits to help us leverage up. We're speaking to private individuals, investors who want to invest in as well. So I would rather deal with funds and private individuals, because, when you're doing bridge or finance, when you work out the fees when they add it on, they add arrangement fees, surveyors fees, solicitors fees, so many different fees, you're paying 15 to 20%. That's most of your margin gone.
Yeah, for sure.
So, if we can, the banks at the moment, Banks are robbing people. So if the base rate's 5%, big banks are only offering savers 1% to 2%, and then they're lending out. They're always making 3 or 4% either way. So I would rather deal with private individuals or companies, give them a good rate like 10%,
that's
8%, 12%. They know their money's safe. We've got the assets to back it as well. We give them security as well. And it's just finding the right people to work with. So that's where we're going to be concentrating on, and it's just finding the right deals.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really good. Thanks for that insight. There's so much knowledge to take in from that, you know, and just the way the economy is and everything going on. It's always a nice subject to touch on here, because I think people like to know what's going on and what could be going on from, you know, from a property professional's point of view. So I think that's really good. Do you want to touch on anything now before we do the quick free?
No, I can't think of anything else really. I've probably rambled on too much.
I think it's been brilliant, Bobby. Really, really good stuff. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll just check. So we'll do some free quick fire questions, if that's all right with you.
Yeah. Okay.
So the first one is your worst deal or your best deal in property?
Well, the worst deal is this fire one, because, you know, to be honest, you know, we've been shortchanged about 150 grand.
Yeah.
We don't know whether we're going to get paid out. So we're still fighting that, and it's expensive and taking time. But we've done this planning to extend it, and hopefully when it's finished, we'll just break even. We'll just recoup. And then if we get the money, I haven't given up on it. So that's probably, and I've learned a lot from it as well. I should have moved quicker, earlier. And I've learned a lot from insurance as well. So I tell everybody, you know, when you're taking insurance, make sure you read all the disclaimers, because they've got teams working how they can get out and not pay you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we had to disclose to them if there was a change of use. And even though, you know, technically the ground floor was just a shell, they're basically saying there's an increase in risk because of the takeaway, but at the time of the fire, it was just a shell. So there's this case of that doesn't apply, but when you look through the small print, they've got me.
Yeah.
So that's probably my worst deal.
It's a bit of a pain, because you want the security and the safety of the insurance, because that's why they're there. But then every time there's a problem or something comes up, and they just fight what they can with all their resource to get out of it, and it's a bit like, you know.
No, even where we live, we've had a subsidence claim with our house. It's taken me 4 years to get the money. 4 years. We fought with them. They didn't want to accept the claim. Then we had to get, you know, like an arborist, like to do a tree survey.
Yeah.
Then we had to get a structural survey, our own one, to show. And then we've been fighting back and forth with the insurance, with different teams. We eventually got there. Luckily, my wife's a solicitor, was a practicing solicitor, so she's helped a lot on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, this insurance, you got to have it. But at the same time, they will, if there's something happens, so it's only once in a blue moon. So I've had 2 insurance claims. I've never claimed in over 25 years. I've never claimed anything. You know, if something happens, you just get it sorted, don't you?
Yeah.
But when they've been big, they've been big,
Yeah.
you know. So you have to have it. But I would make sure you read the small print.
Yeah.
And maybe it's worth paying a little bit extra to get a better package rather than go for the cheapest insurance.
Yeah.
Because you can't, and just factor it into your cost, you can't anticipate, you know, if lightning hits or a car drives into your house or a cannabis farm next door.
Sets on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally. No, I think that's a really good note. 2 of the best books you would recommend that sort of giving you the most information, or, you know, that you enjoyed the most?
So what I've been, this is something quite important to me, and I'm learning about it. So I read a lot on mindset. And I think more important in being successful and having inner peace is understanding how your mind works. So every morning, I mentioned this at the beginning, I work with a group of different developers and business people. We do a bit of yoga in the morning, we do a bit of meditation, do a bit of goal setting for the year, for the week, for 5 years, watch some motivational videos. Mindset, controlling our thoughts. Not controlling our thoughts, we all have similar thoughts, but then it's the action you take after, understanding how the mind works.
Yeah.
And that's something that really I'm trying to teach my kids.
Yeah.
So the best books I can recommend are Understanding How Your Mind Works. Chimp Paradox is a great book.
Okay.
I regularly review that because I still don't practice what's in there, and I regularly review that. Another one I really like is The 12-Week Year.
Yeah, I just read that a week
Really
ago.
great book.
Yeah.
Another one, Atomic Habits.
Okay.
I think books about mindset, I think that's the most important thing that I'm trying to teach my kids as well, to, watch certain, interviews or famous, people, maybe it be Tony Robbins or Dr. Joe Dispenza or David Goggins. They've all got great messages, and it's we're all very similar, but it's understanding, how your mind works, having that discipline as well. And I think discipline is probably the most important thing, really. I don't want to get up at 5:45 in the morning. I hate it every morning.
Yeah.
But if I do a certain routine, and everything's not about work as well. So I think that's really important.
I think that's really good. It probably touches on the last one, but I agree with you there that the mindset is probably the most important thing. And we as we're growing in this sort of environment and social media and the impact of that is still quite unknown, sort of how it's affecting us. So I think the mindset side of things is the most important and valuable thing.
One thing I've learned is you get in our culture. So like I'd say Indian and Chinese culture is probably much older than Western civilizations, and they understand about this spiritual stuff, about the mind. My religion teaches us, but I'm not as connected. I love my culture, but I'm not. I believe in one God. I believe, religions are trying to get the same message across, but they interpret a different way.
Yeah.
But these different older civilizations have been meditating for thousands of years. And this is all coming back now. It's coming back, like yoga's coming back, and yoga's meditation at the end of the day. And I wish I just knew more about it. I've only discovered it later in my life. I've been going to the temple since I was a kid. And I love my culture, I love my religion, but now just meditating, reading books on the mindset, trying to put it into practice, and I'm not nowhere near where I want to be. I think it's really important, people should understand about it,
Yeah, I like that. I really do. I agree with you there. The last point is, what's the biggest, well, we touched on sort of the mindset and dedication. Is that the most successful, one of the most successful traits in successful people or people who do well? I mean, you can't really define success from person to person, but what would you say is a vital role in that?
I think, I struggle with it a lot because you think the worst is going to happen. You look at what's happened in the past, but you can only focus on the now. And it's having this, one thing I'm realizing I'm getting older is we've only got one life and life's really short. You have to take the risks. You never know the answer. And, there's some stuff that ain't going to work out as you think it will. And I've been very fearful as well about things. And there's regrets I've made, which I should have done stuff. But I'm now at the stage now where, I'm trying to get less fearful. You need to take risks as well. Sometimes, you need to take speculative risks, but sometimes you can take too big a risks. It's just finding the right balance.
Yeah, I agree. That's really good. Thanks, Bobby.
No problem.
All right, I've had a great interview. It's been really good.
Thank you.
If people want to reach out to you, is there a way? Would you like to discuss that?
So we're going to be we're working with some people on social media. We'll be on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We will be starting that very, very shortly.
Okay.
If people want to connect with me, so I'm open to working with other developers, people that can complement me, where we can work together. And I think complementing skills is really important. You know, I'm happy to talk to people like that. People who maybe want to invest with us, and we're happy to talk about everything. I got nothing to hide, so there's no grey skeletons in my cupboard. You know, we've got assets, we've got money, you know, and we're here. For me, if we're taking investor money, which I've never done, I've never borrowed any money, by the way.
Okay.
I've done everything with my own money.
Finance, yeah.
So that's a mistake. I should have leveraged.
Yeah.
I've been too cautious in that way, but you know, for me, more important, if somebody invests with them, I pay them back. It's more important that I keep my name and my reputation. You know, I've paid all debts, and I think that's really important. I see a lot of people taking too big a gamble with people's money and not telling the truth.
Yeah.
So I'd rather tell people the truth. So when we're doing analysis on stuff, we're really, really thorough on that. Maybe I'm too thorough. But if people want to connect, reach out.
Okay, I'll put some details below if Bobby wants to supply a email or your Facebook name and stuff like that. So whatever you want to do, I'll put it below. And thanks for coming, Bobby. It's been a great time. All right, take care. Bye.
Ciao.